only, keeping my fingers.
How many please stand for the pledge of allegiance? Pledge of allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're all present except for Doug Benz and Tom Room. Open our regular meeting. Our first item on the agenda is the preliminary review. Jacob Wright presenting the developers of the Tupper Crossroads Hotel project. Hi, Jacob. I think what I'd like to do is maybe if you make your presentation, and then I know each of us have spent a lot of time taking a look. We'll take turns asking Jacob questions. And, maybe if we each ask one question at a time, we'll probably get answers, and then Paul probably has a few questions. And we'll see how it goes. How's that sound? Good. Great. Welcome.
Thank you. Appreciate it. So we came in before for a very preliminary meeting to just see how this would set up, and I said I'd come back with a full team. So during those 2 months of time, we've been doing a lot of work, and present today is Nancy and Betsy, who are the owners of the project and the representatives, and Andy Allison from AJA Architects, and Andy Rim from Chazen Engineers. So I want to give a brief introduction. I'm going to hand it to the professionals that are doing the actual technical work, Andy, and they'll go through the design, the site plan, and parking and height. Part of our goal today is there's two major items that we have to address, and that's height and parking. We're going to need a variance permit from the APA and height. I went and visited the APA informally a few weeks ago to make them aware of the project and that we need height. It being in a hamlet and being the same amount of stories as a lot of the buildings on Main Street, preliminarily it seems like we'll be able to get through that relatively painless. But the thing we always try to do first in the hamlet, because there's jurisdiction, is if we get approvals here and positive recommendations from the board, it helps greatly when we go over to the APA. So we definitely want to discuss that today. Part of the reason we have the picture up here of the apartment building is it gives you a good representation of height, actually, because that's pretty much 4 stories, and Andy from AJA will get into this more, but our building is going to basically mirror that. The eaves will actually be lower. The roof pitch might be close to the same, but there's not going to be much change from what exists today in that building to make the height issue simplistic. I guess they'll get into more detail. On the parking, we are going to need a variance because we have a restaurant and bar. The current regulations is 1-to-1 parking. We put in our application that we'd like a 0.75 for the rooms. Saranac Lake, that's the Saranac Lake zoning, is a 0.75, and many cities throughout the United States have that as part of their zoning. So it does work not only in Saranac but in other areas of the country. On the employee side, we have 22 employees. So you need 11 spots, and we've got 6. But that being said, obviously it's a shift. Hotels are shifts in nature. So housekeeping, everything will be in the morning. They'll leave, and then the night shift with the dinner hour will be in the evening. So obviously not all the employees of the hotel are on site at the same time. And then essentially on the restaurant side, we're going to ask the town to consider that most all restaurants on Main Street don't have specific parking. So part of the challenge that any town or village has with more urban setups and site plans is, do you want the entire town to be a parking lot, or do you want it to be more pedestrian access, right? So that's our argument behind where we're at with the parking, and the guys will get more specific on how we're going to get there. So lastly, I'll end with this. This is our real first meeting with substantial information, so we'd love to get as much feedback as possible. There's certainly things that we've missed. There's certainly things that you're thinking about that we probably haven't at this point, and that's why it's very helpful to get as much information as we can. So next meeting, we can move much closer to a finalized product. So I'll hand it over to Andy Square.
I'll just do a brief
just going to do a real quick introduction as to how we can the organization of this thing on the site, and then I'll let Andy walk through the details, and then I'll spend a little more time talking about what we think the look and feel of the place will be. But you know, the plans that Jacob and Betsy presented last time, what we've been working with them since then is really sort of a deep dive into the interior layout and how the interiors of the building are going to work. And what that did for us is allowed us to settle in on the exterior walls. There's still a lot of work to be done on the inside. There's a lot of decisions to be made, which really doesn't affect anybody here. But we know that the perimeters of these walls are going to stay. We know the size of the heights of the building. So it allowed us to really place this building on the site. And the way, quick organization, the entire right side of this building is really dedicated to hotel functions. It's where people come into the hotel. It's where the front desk is. It's where bathrooms, meeting rooms, offices might be. And then the entire left side of the building is really dedicated to the restaurant, and that was by design. You know, Betsy and Nancy really wanted to create an attraction downtown that was for guests visiting the area as well as locals. So the idea of creating this restaurant on the corner with outdoor seating that could really enliven what is now kind of not alive corner was really sort of the key thing about this project. And then it was a matter of, okay, well, how do you support that then with some overnight stay and guest rooms? So we came up with this. This is really the minimum size that you would need of those two functions to support the room count above. Nothing is too big, nothing's really too small. If anything, in the hospitality trends today, like lobbies and hotel ground floors are starting to get smaller and smaller and smaller. But this really works as a big open space that's really both for public and for guests that are staying there. So we pushed the building this far, and you'll see we're actually encroaching on the front yard setback, which is 15 feet along the front. There's two reasons why we think that's the right thing to do. Number one is it allows us to get a whole another row of parking on the site on this side. And quite honestly, in the village, downtown, the building should be right up against the sidewalk, you know, and that's what gives the character. So we thought that that was in keeping. However, we liked pulling the building back further from this edge to let the intersection open up again because the building is long. You know, we didn't want to crowd that village, so we pulled the building back a little bit from the edge and allowed a little bit of green space to come in here and just soften that piece a little bit. So that ties in really nicely with how this is open, and then there's that remaining open lot. And then, you know, Betsy and Nancy were really fortuitous to get this back lot, which allowed us to get even more parking that came on board. So it's a pretty good flow. The flow works really nice. It allows all our services to come in the back, so they're not coming through the front door of the hotel. It allows our guests not only to walk up into a front door, but as they drive in, they're very much aware of where the front door is. They go back here and park. They have sidewalks that can bring them up to a side entrance, bring them up to the front entrance. We could do a little drop off here. And then once they've been in the hotel for a night or two, they understand that they can come in the back door too as well for parking their car back here. So it really is about minimizing the amount of signage you need because the building is laid out in a smart way that when you drive in, you've already figured out where you're supposed to go. And that's one of the key things in hospitality is never make people ask questions. And the whole building is laid out on that premise. So, you know, it has a nice front porch. We really wanted this front porch feeling along the building. That was one of the clues that we picked up on when we looked at historic hotels, not only in the Adirondacks, but all over the country. There were always these nice sort of like white ladies that were down in the village, and they had this nice front porch, and everybody could just sort of hang out there, whether you were a guest or not. It was okay. So that was one of the key driving factors in that, and then just really respecting the work that DOT has done. So that's the fun, sexy part of the design, but I'll let Andy talk about the engineering parts.
Everybody have coffee if you get bored. Hi, I'm Andy Ripp from the Chasing Companies. So Andy kind of walked us through quite a bit about the building itself. So I'm just going to take the outside boundary and kind of work from the inside just so we can kind of have the general framers. So the property line out in front along Park Street here is after the DOT came through and you folks were all involved with the DOT and it's the right of way that's left over. Interestingly enough, there is the kind of the permanent taking, so to speak, at the corner of Park and Mill that right now has street light poles in it and a couple are decorative or undecorative things, but it's kind of a managed corner. And so that property line is approximately in this location. And then the outer bounds you can see we're plus minus an acre, you know, right around an acre of size in totality. We're actually 6 parcels of land. There's 6 individual lots that are part of the process here. They're all under ownership, but the deeds are not quite the same and all that, so it's not a simple real property. Just consolidate the lots administratively. I used to be an assessor, so I could do that. So it's actually kind of a reverse subdivision, right? Taking 6 parcels and turn them into one would be one of the actions that we would be looking for. And so there's 4 of the parcels on the, let's call it the upper plateau, Allen Park, and 2 parcels that are kind of linear strip parcels that front off of Lake Street. And so within that context of the building framework that Andy talked about, you've got the pink kind of signia here is in portion in the rendering, some of what's already out there and some of we reconstruct when there's a couple of drop curb ramps you saw in the picture up there. There's some curb line work that we would do. Utility systems, you know, the nice thing about the DOT project is I had some cursory knowledge of that going way back when we were working with them, and we're like, hey, there's something that could be here someday. How about a water tap, for instance, you know, and a sewer tap. So that's kind of been pre-planned smartly so that we're going to be able to utilize those utility services out to the front of the property. So the property's set up right now. This upper plateau is pretty flat, you know, generally speaking, right? Everybody's seen it and knows it even much better than I'll pretend to at this point. But that site there then kind of rolls down about 6 feet or so down to this lower level where the residential houses were, you know, on this lower level. And so what we looked at is how to place the building, and you talked about how to spatially place it in relation to the street. And there's also this vertical placement. You know, how do you want the hotel to sit, you know, in relation to the walkability to the street and the really connection to the streetscape. So right now the building's kind of set. If I board you with a grading plan, you know, it's kind of set to be just up above the curb line so that everything kind of gradually is kind of flat and the building just kind of cascades there. That sets the framework then for the grading and the doors. This rendering has more doors on it than the one that maybe came in your packets initially. We revised this one yesterday. And so you've got, and you mentioned the primary entry door here, and then there's also 3 entry doors along the front to the bar restaurant area. There's a side entrance exit for public or hotel guest entry point here. The 2 lower entrances that are shown here with these doors now, we're working out the details, but they'd probably be 2/3 flight of stairs, you know, like a 6-foot flight down, so to speak, to have access kind of back out to this area being a service area, this area being basically a fire code, you know, exit here. So the way we organized, so that's a lot about the building and the people. The way we organize the traffic here is this roadway intersection here. We're not a terrible distance away from, you know, one of your primary lighted intersections, right? So we tried to keep that, you know, driveway point as far, you know, to the east as we could. And then in that, we kind of consciously talked about, well, what's the traffic pattern? And we thought it would be successful to have a one-way pattern, a one-way in. So one-way in that allow people to circulate out 2 ways in and out of Lake Street from down below, and then this would be signed for no access up through here. And so we have right now 11 parking spaces. All the parking spaces are designed initially with the intention of meeting the current code for parking space size. So these are 11 angled spaces, 3 additional pull-in spaces, and then down below 24 spaces with a 26-foot drive aisle. So it's a pretty modest drive aisle. I mean, a lot of ordinances at 24 feet. We kind of recognize the climate that you're in. Sometimes 26 is just better in the winter conditions, and so we haven't intentionally narrowed that at this point. So you'll see here, this is the delivery access, the idea of the delivery access point where you could have a pull-off spot. If this is one way and there's no exit, people can still get by, so that would be for small box truck type delivery service to the hotel or for the restaurant use. Then back here is kind of the garbage refuse area kind of in this. So when I do look at the grading, I do want to show you that. What we do?
I just flip that over.
Is it this one? Yep. So this kind of give you a little illustration of grading. Contours are always fun. But basically we're staying fairly level, so all this is accessible. So we have ADA accessibility for the parking here. and also for anybody walking along the public thoroughfare. There's ADA accessibility throughout for the building. Here we start ramping down, and then we have a slope, I believe it's 6%, but I have to look at that in the lower part of my Bible. If I recall correctly, 6% slope here. So we're trying to match up to the neighboring property lines. You see the contours trying to kind of tie back so that we stay in tune with it. But that zone kind of comes down right now where the power pole and the power line is. It kind of comes down and kind of cuts real quick. So we do have to kind of navigate that by kind of matching up there. So you'll see that there's an existing retaining wall along the back of the property here. And you can see this, the intent to tag a corner and kind of build that back into that. And then over here, we need some building retainage to get our lower level access here, while being able to maintain the current grades at the neighboring properties over here. So the grading is definitely a challenge, and we think we found a workable solution that could work for all. And so I'm going to flip back from that real quick to talk about the front part of the building again. Andy mentioned we have this nice porch in this patio. We have this area right now that's, without our project together with it, felt like it was kind of a disconnected space, right? And so what we're actually intending is to integrate it into the fabric of the design for the hotel, and to have an ability to aesthetically blend in, and then also have the stewardship that's required to make that perennially stay that way. So that's kind of why you're seeing us painting within the DOT right away. We know that requires the permits and the approvals on the review of the DOT, but we think that's an intelligent choice for us to make here.
And that's community benches and stuff, right? Yeah.
Community benches, planters, bollards, all those kind of fun things. We do have the signal poles, so we placed this design. It's hard to see because renderings cover up all the other stuff, right? or lack there. And the signal pole is actually a decorative pole, it's not really. But that's actually right here in the middle, and then there's another light pole there. So there's two poles, and so this design actually respects that infrastructure. There's additional signage. I picked up on the cue of the first image that was kind of up there, and you can see the directional signage, for various recreational tourism things. That's right at our front door. We look at that. If you back up just a hair, just pull back just a bit.
Back
Yeah,
up.
so drive that way, yep. A little bit more and then turn. Yep. There we go. So that's one of those items that when we think of the signage palette as we keep designing, we do have some foundational signs that are shown, in our plan. We don't have yet all of the roadway signage, but that to me signifies, that's a DOT style way of doing that. We'd be open to thinking about other styles of doing that because of the building's close proximity.
Mm-hmm.
So that image leads us to the next discussion, which is lighting. And so one of the things that we have to our advantage, we have really nice new street lighting, right? And that's all nice LED, street lighting, and they're decorative, and it fits the village flair and vernacular as opportunities for banners, things of that nature. So what we're looking at is within our property, you can see these yellow blurbs. There's a lot of yellow blurbs on this plan for site lighting, and that's because what we want to do is we want to keep the site lighting at a fairly low profile within the site. We don't want to put in 25-foot, light poles that are going to have light kind of, in big amounts. And so what we want to do is 12 feet. There's an image that was added to the package there. That's just a representative style example of what we would be looking at. Something that's pedestrian scale, let's say 12 feet height, that allows you to directionally, with LED lighting, shine the light where you want to, keep it from trespassing on neighbors' yards. The lighting industry's come a long ways in the last 5-10 years, and that in regards to that, and to have that stylistically match up to the building. So that's kind of the intention there. We are pushing. One of the early comments we heard is about the retaining wall where they light. We had simply labeled it a low rope, about 2 to 3 foot high, low profile wall. Really it is. I'd love to just cut back the grade and we can match back in, and but we don't want to do that. We want to blend it properly to the neighboring property line. And that's the reason to put in a wall that's literally this tall. It's kind of a concrete. It's a Jersey barrier height, pretty much. And so there's some pictures in there shows that of the segmental block wall we would look very closely at the texture and the color of that in relation to the building or any masonry that's on the building, to match that up. And so that is kind of an important necessary item here, because even though the site's flat and it's all flat, everything rolls to the eye. Talk to a surveyor and they can always shoot the grade better than most of us with the naked eye. Then this back wall here is a little bit higher wall, but probably still in the 3-foot territory here. Snow storage, we thought about that a little bit. Snow storage back in here potentially is a good spot. Here, if we do the curves in the right manner, I believe we can kind of plow to the sides, so to speak, along these two areas. If we use, instead of a standard 6-inch granite curve, if we use kind of a mountable curve type of thing, that would work effectively and well here. And so that's in the landscaping. We want to create a palette. We're just showing green blobs. We haven't specified the exact tree yet. But the idea, you can see by the size of them, the idea is to create a nice mature, tree line for the neighboring properties, and to really kind of buffer the site and all that, and set apart the framework, for the hotel and the view. In the front, we would look to do an ornamental landscape that kind of connects that breezeway and patio structure to the streetscape. Having close proximity is great. You always want to make sure they feel integrated but separate at the same time. It's that counterbalance there. And so there'd be a lot more work that you would see eventually in the detailing for this particular thing. I think I've probably worn out
Andy, can you
my
do
tongue,
elevations?
so maybe
Yeah.
back to the architecture.
Sure.
Thank you.
So when we first started on the project, one of Betsy and Nancy's real goals was to make the building kind of look like it's always been there. And it's a fine balance in the resort industry or hotel industry to make it feel like it's always been there, but also make it feel fresh, so that people like coming there. They kind of feel like it has a sense of its own. So we looked at references, both local, like really local, regionally local, and then also references to, what were some other buildings of scale that have stood the test of time and have left their mark in the historic significance of architecture. So the Red Lion Inn in Stockbridge has been one of the buildings that we keep kind of referring back to, not really the interiors, but just how that sits in that town and really has become a defining thing. I think if you were to see, hand-drawn CAD drawings and elevations of this building right now, you'd be like, I don't understand what's going on, but it works, and that's the way it is with a lot of architecture, because you're trying to interpret two-dimensional drawings into real time, but that really has stood the test of time. There's nothing really fancy about it. It's a big rectangle. It has some ornamentation to it. They've changed up siding here and there to do some things. They've played with fenestration along the ground floor, but really the thing that makes that thing sing is that front porch, and having this sort of restaurant on the corner is one of the things that led us to some of our thoughts. Paul Smith's, the old hotel there that burned down, again, it's a big white box. It has really nice front porches, and it feels really warm and inviting when you get there. The restaurant used to be here in Tupper Lake. This is a little bit different roof design, but again, so in terms of scale, their proportions from floor height, between the floors, and then where the roof transitioned up to a darker color. And then, I always love this, the Adirondack Hotel, when that was first done, and it was just sort of this nice clean white inn, it just really felt like a really beautiful, pristine place. And then again, the Iroquois, which was in Tupper also, this is a masonry building, but again, it's about scale. So we really picked up some of those clues and tried to integrate them into our project. And we came up with, an elevation that just tried to, again, we have a couple things we have to balance. One is you have to be able to afford to build a building. Buildings of today, they also have to deal with snow management off of roofs. So we tried to come up with a building that had some articulation in terms of had gables on the front. We introduced some architectural elements. We really worked on this front porch feeling, and we really left most of the detailing, the fine articulated detailing, down on the ground floor, where people will actually walk by it and see it and appreciate it more, rather than coming up with ornamentation that would spill out through the eaves and along the rakes and frieze boards. The big thing that makes these buildings work is the proportion and scale of the windows. You know, if you look at how well balanced the positive and negative spaces are on that worked really well. And that was the key thing that we did in working out the room layouts, was to make sure that the windows could really march and really open up that facade and have it be really warm feeling. So this was sort of the flat elevation view, and then, you know, when you start to look at that in real time, Paul, I don't know if you can go back to your Google Earth map back there, but you can actually put because this was the Google Earth image. You can position your cursor there, and you can get a feeling. So you're on the opposite side, you're over by that white car. Watch it. This will be funny. We'll actually probably see the white car. Back up a little bit more. Yeah. You go to like where the blue car is there. Stick your cursor there, and then spin around. So that's the actual image that we use to model this in. So this is the actual building as it sits now. And you know, we always felt that this really just sort of, it fits really nice in terms of scale. If you think about some of the designs of some of the older hotels, and if you look at this parcel, historically there were 3 or 4 buildings that made up this corner, and there's some images online, and they're taken from much further down, but the scale of this is almost in the same context as those. So again, what we really wanted to try to do was to get this feeling of coming in and just make it known that this is here without having it be some sort of grand architectural statement that took up too much space on the corner. We wanted it to be very simple because the building is big. So we did this. We got that front porch on the front. The roof lines really march nicely down Main Street as you go down. And you know, I think the other thing here is that the height of it is the one thing that we really worked hard on. This height, if you look at the rendering of the picture, the apartment building in the back, this eave line, if you looked at that picture there, would be just above those upper row of windows. So you can see how this building actually starts slightly lower than that building. By the time this roof is done climbing up, it will probably be just slightly higher than the peak of that roof, but you'll never really experience that being a pedestrian walking in town. So it has a really nice scale. You know, when we, back in 2016, when we started, the first idea was to have 4 stories, and we went through the design and we were in love with it. You know, we had 65 rooms or something like that, and the financials were really looking good. And we looked at the rendering of it like this, and immediately Betsy and Nancy were like, no way, it's too big, we can't do that. So they immediately dropped it down to 3 stories, and that's kind of where we ended up. And it stayed sort of true to the original design. So we think it's nice. There's going to be some stone. We're going to use some natural stones. The stone actually comes out of the Champlain Valley. And then you can see the little entrance sign sort of in the back that'll bring guests in. But you've really arrived here. You know where it is by now, and you're going to understand that the parking is back here. You just head right in. So, any questions?
Thanks, Andy. I'll do a quick wrap up, I guess. So I was so excited to introduce Andy and Andy. I didn't introduce myself really well. So I'm from Skyward Hospitality. We're building the hotel on the water in Saranac Lake. And Andrew is with me, and he's our CFO. So we're the developer and manager of the project. So Saranac Lake's a $27 million project, and it's the first LEED certified hotel in the park. And Nancy and Betsy have put it on us to make sure this is the second LEED certified hotel in the park. So we're going to be working on responsible environmental development and construction on this project. So that's basically it. In conclusion, we'd love to, like I said, hammer us with everything you got, and we'd appreciate it. And we'd also, I mentioned height parking, but we'd also like to discuss seeker and how that process will work, because that's something that Andy needs to get going on here ASAP. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Certainly a great building, and it's a great spot for it, and it's exciting to see development in Tupper Lake going on. I guess my first question is the front of the building looks nothing like what you came with 2 months ago. The elevations of the porches. And what was your change for? What drove that?
Well, I think the renderings that we had before, really the layout of the porches have remained the same. The one thing we did have to do is we had to cut back on this porch a bit because of that DOT right away. We wanted this to be much grander, but we would get over top of that DOT right away line, and we don't really wanna try to build building on their property. That would be a different discussion, so we had to bring that back in terms of its scale. You know, the ornamentation along here is a little bit more detailed out now than what we had, in terms of it's been more thought through. So we've actually looked at what the columns might start looking like. You know, these would be a boxed out column. We'd have a decorative railing. The one thing we're blessed with is that we can have a little more fun with the railings because it's not required by code, because we're not actually a fall. It's just meant to screen. So this we can have a lot of fun with what that looks like, and really the detailing of that porch. You know, I would say right now, in terms of the architectural detailing, is more of a gesture. So that's something that can still be developed and worked on much more. It's the size of the porch that, because we're trying to balance parking, setbacks, and you know all of that, we had to bring back the size of that slightly. We originally had some second-story balconies on here as well, but again, you know, the size of the building, there were some meeting rooms up on this second floor, but because of where the setbacks are, we couldn't make the room counts work and then have meeting rooms up on that second floor, and so we had to pull back from those two as well.
I think the porches are what give it the historical context to the community.
Yeah.
This is your original rendering.
Yeah, those second floor porches all supported meeting rooms, which have been pulled back from the program. They're now on the back side of the building.
Why couldn't those porches be accessed from guest rooms?
They probably could. Yeah, I could see a scenario where we could come up and, you know, really kind of enclose this corner here, and maybe those guest rooms on those areas get access to those porches.
So I'm really not getting the feel of porch. This, of course, we're looking at just one elevation, but it really looks more like a carport than a porch.
Yeah, I think when you're driving by it, and this, it certainly really brings in that feeling of a porch, especially that lower level. But I could see up in here where that level right in there, you could introduce a roof line in here and maybe add a set of porches out there that are just for those guest rooms only.
You couldn't run it right across the front of the building?
Well, it'd be pretty hard in here because these guest rooms, they get in the way. But this is a big space. You know, this is probably all of 30 to 40 feet. Like in that rendering right there, this space probably goes back as far as if you start from the left, working your way over to the fourth post. That's how that would look. But I don't think that there'd be a scenario, like I actually would not by design run porches all the way across this, because it would get, the proportions would be off. Like that is actually, you know, the third story, and we actually had some rooms in that fourth story and some of those dormers higher up in the gables. But, you know, some other things you could do here too would maybe be to implement, you know, some dormers that pop up into the roof line to bring some of that stuff back.
Well,
Did you have another comment on the porch?
yes.
Go ahead.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Dave.
Okay, so I kind of agree with Sean about that second story porch. It does add quite a bit to it, and I understand that you couldn't do it all the way around, but it certainly would be nice to see that second story porch.
Well, you drew a great rendering.
And I fully realize I've seen artistic renderings before and how that interprets it. You know, you get back into an architectural drawing. That's totally.
Yeah, and that, just for reference, that building is probably 15 feet taller than this building
Yeah,
as
it's
well.
different.
So we'd be in a much, so we had to pull some.
And I understand that.
Yeah. But I agree. I actually was saying the other day, I said, boy, it could be, like I could see those two guest rooms up there, actually it's 4 guest rooms, that could get access to porches off that level. I mean, and it could be a nice touch just to finish it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And well, we can go, if you want to just me finish my questions, and then if someone else has that, something
Why
about
don't you have some questions? If not, we'll
Okay,
get to
one
the next.
questions, okay, that's
Yeah,
fine.
we'll go around, because
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
someone else will answer the next question.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Well, I'm gonna stick with the porch. I agree with the first
Oh, I'm
two.
sorry. Dave had his own question now.
No, that's fine, I follow.
Go ahead.
That's okay.
Looks like the Democratic debate.
No. Go ahead. No, my main question was about the parking, in which I think that you clarified my questions about the parking. So
Great.
that was my main
So
concern.
mathematically, where you come up with parking if you go 0.75?
You have the number.
It's 32 parking spaces at 0.75 for the 42 units is what is required.
And you end up at 38.
And then we end up at 38 in total because we were saying, we clarified the application, everything at 22 workers.
Right.
You know, and so we clarified from the initial submission to the revised one to get to that mark. There was kind of an error in the chart, you know, on the first submission. And so what the code says, so we interpret is that 1 per 2 workers,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so what we were saying is, okay, I just put the 6 for those, or the 11
Six
there.
remaining those.
I put the 6 remaining in that category. You know, whether or not you could say, well, we're gonna put 38 for hotel guests instead of 32. We haven't talked about like citing each one like guest spot or not, you know, at this level. But basically we're at 38 total with meeting the requirement at a minimum for the residents, the guests. Yeah. And then the banquet and restaurant and bar use having to be kind of more of an urban philosophy of parking on the street and using other areas. Because a lot of I think we talked through the programming, obviously a lot of the visitation to the restaurant and to the bar are going to be hotel guests, but not all of them. It's not an inclusive, you know, project. But, so that's kind of some of the logic of in urban situations. You know, a lot of times you'll see that.
I'm just gonna reinforce the porch, now that I have, well, I only have 17 questions, so just bear with me. Four of your 5 historic hotels had second story porches, which are beautiful. And to be quite honest with you, when this was in the paper, this came out, when you presented it a couple months ago, I was truly excited about the building. When we got the first set of drawings, I was totally disappointed. I won't say I was insulted, but I was really disappointed in the first set of drawings that came in. And then with the quick hit list that Paul sent out, and then with the second set, I think you folks have moved to where I think we're all thinking about where the hotel could be. I would really like to, I mean, I got it, so, you know, here it is. If you want to take this back with you, there's the second story porch right there, only to there. And I think I agree, coming down the street, it would be fantastic. And even though it serves 4 rooms or 5 rooms, whatever it might serve versus conference rooms, you know, that there is, I think, is gorgeous. Now, you throw in some of the other details that you've thrown in now in terms of the siding and the facade and so on and so forth. I think you got a great looking project.
Yeah. And I don't disagree with you. Like I think it would add to it. We just have to be really careful about how much of it, because you did reference these, but also all of those ones that have second story porches are actually, they're 4-story buildings. Compared to the height, you know, even though they're not, like this one is an actual 3-story building, but these guys were 15 feet floor to floor, and we're like 9, you know, so that balance is really tough, especially, but that, you know, your solution right there is probably what we would come back and study. That level, that amount of it.
No charge. And I got a couple of dormers scratched on them too,
Yeah.
just
And
doghouse dormers.
You know, just to reference, I'm not dissuaded, because I actually agree that would look good, but if you look at the Red Line Inn, it's extremely successful. It's lauded across America as one of the historically significant and architecturally significant buildings. It's 3 stories, single story porch. And it's about how it addresses the streetscape. And that is more important than I think what, you know, the discussion about second story or not, really what happens between that porch and the streetscape, and how does that bring in the public? That's what's really going to make it sing. But I will hedge my own comment saying that I do think it would add to the project if we could figure out a way to get that edge, that corner to come back a little bit more to what we had originally.
So as the business is done, right?
Yeah.
We hear you loud and clear.
Again, I agree with the porch, and the differences too, the porches in the models that you had given us, they're raised from the ground.
Yeah,
Also, and this one's kind of like one step up,
yeah,
so that's the difference too. I think that adds to the attraction of those
yeah.
buildings,
I would love to do that, but in today's modern age, it's really inappropriate to raise buildings higher up when we're considering accessibility. And it's fine to have an accessible entrance into a building that's raised up higher out of the ground, but it's really kind of not where the current trends in accessibility are going, because it's not just about people in wheelchairs, it's about people with canes, and it's about giving them access to everything. So we really wanna have as much access to this porch to everybody, and the other thing we're fighting is height variances. So I would love to, those two things aside, I would raise this thing up 4 feet in the air and get these big grand steps to come up and just have that great wonderful feeling. My zoning tells me we can't, APA tells me we shouldn't, and my conscience tells me that there's a whole population of people out there who absolutely hate that stuff.
right, okay.
So, yeah, I agree, but I
Just
agree with
as
you,
a
aesthetically,
point,
I
that was
love
just
it.
as a point, I like your rendering, Jim, of the porch on the second level as well. I did have a question though on the side entrance.
Sure.
Is that, how are you addressing that side entrance? Is that a walk-up step? I mean, there seems to be,
On the backside. Flip over that one, I think.
What's the one that's up?
The
The one that's on that.
Oh, yeah.
I'm missing this rendered site plan. Where is that?
oh, maybe it's on this one.
That's,
She's.
It's on the side.
that's right. So, this guy you're referring to?
Right, I kind of,
This one?
we don't
Yeah.
have a front view of that, so how's that looking in? Is there a
view there?
Yeah, there's a view there. You know,
Yeah,
it's-
kind
it's
of,
gonna have-
is it steps, or how's that work?
No, this is, so this right here is the curb cut, is the
Oh, there's a
accessible
curb
curb cut,
cut,
so you come
okay.
in, come across sidewalks and come in that. We're not trying to draw a ton of attention to that entrance,
Right.
so it's gonna serve as more of a secondary building. But it'll be protected, you know, it has, you go through a vestibule to get in, so it has all those requirements.
And one of the choices we're making in balancing the building with the site and how it fits in and gives us opportunities is that this walkway is an accessible walkway to here. This is all kind of leveled out at a plateau, and here we start turning. This stays up at that elevation here, it goes down a little bit, but stays up in part, so you see this little bit of retaining wall, so we kind of hold that up so we can get, that we actually divert the road slightly away from the angle of the face of the building. It allows us to get a better curve in here for emergency vehicle type access, you know, when you run the kind of a template down through here. And so it allows us to kind of break away from that, and it also adds more opportunity to landscape something differently than saying, well, what we have left is 3 feet, so we're gonna put a row of arborvitae along the face of the building. You know, it gives us and blend that architecture and site back in there, that corner. That's the intent.
It's interesting, the curb cut.
Yeah, I mean, it's clear you guys have been very thorough in the entire planning of what you have going on here, and you guys touched really well on the porch thing, so I'm not gonna beat that in there, but, my main concern is with the parking, and I understand the 0.75 ratio for it, and, you know, the shift thing for the employee parking and everything else, but I think, you know, relying solely on on-street parking for the restaurant and bar patrons, I think you're gonna find a lot of times you're gonna have hotel guests unable to find parking, yeah, and, you know, and mainly because there's already a lack of available parking in this kind of neighborhood, in general as it is, you know, so.
And that is the challenge ahead of the project, I think, is to strike that right balance. And it's not unique to this project. You know, every town that has an urban core deals with this. If you look at it from a scientific and engineering standpoint, it's never going to work. and yet it always works. So that has been our biggest thing, is that we've been trying to strike that balance. You know, as I said earlier, we actually, really the financials say, and our desire was to have a much bigger building, but part of the reason to bring it back was the scale of the building on the site, and also it was like we had to have some parking, you know, and we've looked at ideas of, you know, parking in garages and underground parking, and by the time you do that, there's no project to be had because the costs are just astronomical, so. And then also for a downtown core, you know, you don't really want missing teeth. You know, like, so if you think about the buildings and creating a density downtown in a village, you don't want to create big parking islands because that takes away from the character of the village, so it's always trying to get that balance.
So in addition to science side, on the business side, and the projections, we're thinking maybe 60 days a year of 100% occupancy, right? So on a night like tonight, the hotel's not going to be full. We're not projecting that. So, you know, when you run into the parking issues of the hotel's flat out and you've got meeting and restaurant, first of all, when the hotel's full, the restaurant's usually full from the hotel. And that's why this scientific stuff tends to work out in a lot of cities. That, you know, as an example, our parking for Saranac, what they made us do, if the Lake George Marriott had to do our parking requirements, they're short to 132 spots. But it's not cramming Lake George with traffic everywhere in this horrible parking incidents, right? So the reason it works is the vast majority of the time you're not 100% full, so you don't need that maxed out parking. So that's kind of the business angle of it, I guess.
I personally think lack of parking is a good thing. If they have to park down by the post office or the funeral home, it makes them walk through Park Street to get up to the destination. And I personally think that's a good thing, but obviously it has to be a balance of it.
I'll do one last, if you don't mind. As you can see on the site, there's not much left either. So we understand it's an issue, but there's really, outside of elevating it, putting cars underneath it, or something crazy like that, there's not much else we can do. So we have thought through this and tried to maximize. There's a lot of different ideas. At first, it was two-way up top, and we certainly spent a good number of days and months, frankly, trying to figure out how to have a good balance here.
So the next question is, you got a big roof, you got a lot of blacktop. So where's all this water gonna go?
Yeah, so I was remiss in not covering that better in the part of the presentation. So Andy and I are working on some of the details on how the roof pitch and the roof collection of the stormwater.
Anything off the roof gets collected and piped into whatever he's gonna come up with. I did my part.
You know, when you think about stormwater, our job, I mentioned before, we're about an acre of property. We're right about an acre disturbance. It depends which way we slice it. So regulation-wise, we're on that cusp of, you know, the DEC stormwater regulations. We're not, you know, an important word that I heard earlier today that Jacob said was LEED. So when you talk about doing anything with LEED, it's all about sustainability and you're required, you know, you want to get those credits. You need those site credits, or it's really hard to get the LEED because the money starts evaporating in the building real quick. And so, no matter which governing program it is, we have to achieve two goals, and really the third goal. One is the stormwater rate of runoff. Right now you've got kind of a sea of gravel and disturbed area for the most part, right? So now water just kind of goes somewhere, right? And you guys have probably seen various evidences of where it goes. Infrastructure-wise, we know we have a catch basin out here in the DOT system out on Park. We have a catch basin here on Mill Street, and we have a catch basin that they didn't quite put exactly where I wanted it to. We should have told them to stick it right in front of the entry, but it's just down here. So we have 3 different points that we can discharge stormwater to, depending on the grade levels that we're at, to not outmanage that rainwater intensity in the management for the rate of runoff. Because we just took the whole site and put all of it right in this catch basin here, all of it doesn't necessarily go right here, right now. So in our stormwater modeling that we're gonna be doing much more of, this is a grading plan that in the storm system, and I know will work, just cause I know it'll work. Do you have, Andy, do you have the grading plan, or the utility plan? It's probably up there, on that, but I'll describe it to you anyways. So out in front here, because we have this structure, we can manage some stormwater. We have a catch basin kind of symbolized right here. So we can manage some of that roof runoff and out in the front and control the rate of discharge and send it out into the system that's out here. So that's part of how we can break up the front part of the plateau or the ridge line of the building and kind of push it towards here. Generally speaking, that's what it probably originally did, you know, historically. We have this part of the building, we have this conduit line here that allows us to, in theory, it's shown on our utility plan, to put a system through to manage the stormwater of this parking past the high point here. So this amount of paving that goes this way and it goes here, we catch it before it becomes a stream down the curb line, right? Especially in the winter, and it's tough conditions, and this winter it's frozen and thawed just about every day, right? Which, so that becomes a management thing and a safety thing as well. So we would take this particular area and this particular area and send it out to here. We would take the lower profile of the site, which currently all goes out to the Lake Street area, and we would collect all of that. There's a catch basin symbol here. We would collect all of that and get it out into that system. Once again, requiring a DOT kind of conversation in all 3 points. But it's actually sets itself up pretty nicely because, you know, after I looked at it, I'm like, geez, you're leaving me no space, you know, to do this, and just in an engineer's theory. And then I realized, well, a lot of it's kind of paved and gravel and impervious now, so we're not really changing the condition versus today that much. But the advantage we have is I actually have a triangular pointed thing to where I don't have, some projects you dig a big hole on the side of the woods, right? And you put all the stormwater there and then you let it sink in or detain for a while. So that I think is really a fortunate strategy that we can employ here. With the lead and all that, we look at bioretention, rain gardens, those type of things that we can add aesthetic to the landscape, but you have to work on the stormwater quality piece. The DEC, whether or not you end up having to go through the DEC with the stormwater management, really the thing that would change here is about the stormwater quality. Because there's prescribed things they force you to do, whether it's a betterment or not. It's kind of, you know, you can argue the philosophies of that. But that is water quality treatment. So there's 2 real ways to do that, right? Green infrastructure, everybody hears the term green infrastructure. A lot of that is the bioretention, the stormwater planters, the rain gardens, those type of things. There's also these hydrodynamic separators, which are essentially big catch basins that swirl the water around the stormwater as it runs off. The total suspended solids kind of sink to it. So it's kind of like anything you've stirred up, and if you didn't stir your powdered tea good, you know, the powder sinks to the bottom, right? That's what that is. It's a fancy way to say a big catch basin that lets, you know, sort of go down. That's an approved device. That's something that Jacob could order and just stick in the ground right there. You know, that to me meets the requirement, but maybe doesn't add the value to the project. But it is something that we would look at. We're literally right at that edge of that 1 acre disturbance. We're toggling with that. But either way, when you hear when you hear lead and, you know, quality development like this, as a person that works for I'm a landscape architect actually, by nature, but I work for an engineering firm. You know, when you hear that, the engineer's mindset changes from the basic utilitarian thing to a more integrated, sustainable approach. And so, I don't know if that answered the question in a very long-winded, you know, circular way, but hopefully it answered.
You're comfortable with the stormwater runoff?
Yeah, I'm comfortable we can manage the stormwater runoff because we can break it and we can break that up and manage it in different ways across the site. So we can hit the volume, rate of runoff, and the stormwater quality buckets.
Jim?
Yeah,
Jim's got 16 more.
I got 15 more to go. So,
Well, they got 100 ones.
I'm, well, two parts. One, it's the holiday week in the winter time, Christmas time, and it's 10 below, and I'm the last guy in at 8 o'clock at night. There's no on-street parking. What's the front desk gonna tell me to do when the parking lot's full? I'm just curious, do you have a plan, like, well, we got behind the library, we got down by the ball field, we've got, are you thinking about, I mean, where do I go? I there's no place to park.
Right, at that
What am
point,
I gonna do?
probably valet.
Yeah, I was gonna ask.
Okay, I've been to not many places with valets, but a couple.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, then it wouldn't be all the time.
No.
obviously.
Yeah, it would be.
And tonight we wouldn't be valeting.
Yeah, no, not at all.
And I've run a couple of hotels where, one in Annapolis, Maryland, where it's a lot of smaller streets and there's just not enough parking and it's valet. So first of all, we think ahead. We know we have our forecasts on when our high octane nights are, right? And so it's something during the day when we're just how we're parking the cars and things like that. We're gonna know.
And we tell our employees to park
Yeah,
at the house and we pick them up in the carpool. and,
Yeah, that's
Okay.
another.
All right. As long as I think there's a plan, as long as you have a
Yeah.
plan that could go out to the public, Joe Public, who's at the front desk.
A lot of times I've seen, places like this too, they'll take like the front two spots when they know hot Wednesday nights and they'll say, these two spots are reserved for check-in, check-out only, so you know you can park your car
Yeah,
there and just check in and then, the valet guys can deal with it when they have time.
Going back to that little check-in right there, I'm coming from the west, I'm coming from the junction, and I'm gonna drive by the lower parking lot. I know I'm going to your hotel, and I'm gonna drive by, but what happens if I turn in? What if I go, hey, somebody told me there's a lower parking lot, I got a 3-point turn myself out if there's enough cars in there, and then pull out and then come around. I love this project, by the way. I'm not trying to be.
We love constructive criticism, so
And-
it's helpful.
So, but let's say.
Couldn't you be a rebel and go the wrong way on one way?
You could, but then you can't pull out. So let's say I come down Park Street and I pull in. I love your sign. I mean, the upright.
Right.
I love that sign, but I don't see where I know where to pull over. And maybe there's signage you haven't mentioned to unload, and it's what 50 feet maybe to the front door from the parking lot. Most of it uncovered. Generally there's there's either a carport canopy or and you pull in but nothing. What's going to make me pull in there other than pulling into maybe a space that's open, but maybe not. Can't guarantee that. And do I go to the side entrance? Is that going to be a secondary check? Because you go right around the corner to the front desk.
No, the side entrance, our sense is that when you pull into the parking lot, you're gonna have seen the front door. You're also gonna see this side entrance. You're gonna walk right in that side entrance. So that side entrance would not be the kind that requires a key to get in and out of. But it would probably have some signage on there and say to hotel lobby, so that as a pedestrian walking, because you would be walking, right? You would have parked your car, say here, or even down here. As a pedestrian walking, you would know that you can get in this. Like this would be lit in a way that so when you drive by, you know that this is a way for people who are parking in here to come in because the front desk is right here.
Right.
So it's specifically designed to receive guests with both of these.
But I don't know. I other than the ADA sidewalk cutout, I don't know what's going to make me pull in there. I don't know.
Pull in where?
To check in. Where do I go to check in?
Well, you would go in front.
I mean, how do I know I'm going to stop at the corner of the building?
You most likely would. You're going to park the car. You're going to park your car. So if you park here, that's where you're going to park. Park here, park here, park here.
Yeah.
This isn't designed in a way that there's a portico that you pull off, unload your car.
I can see that. That's my point.
Yeah, and that's limitations of the site.
Yes,
In a
exactly.
perfect world, and if you look back at some of the older hotels, they don't have that. these guys don't have that, none of these, and it's
Right.
okay, like hotels, it's an inconvenience sometimes, but even some of the more, you know.
So the
sort
side
of-
entrance will have signage like this for checking in, front desk,
Yeah.
pull
yeah,
in or
yeah.
pull, and I guess it's wide enough, you could pull to the left and stop, and a car can still go by.
I will tell you, we have discussed what this looks like pretty extensively,
Yeah.
and that might not be fully baked yet. I think that's kind of what you're getting.
Yeah.
If you see the sign here, you know, okay, I'm at the hotel, I'm gonna pull in, and you see the sign, but then what does this look like to invite you in?
Exactly.
You know, the part, yeah, so that, we can get some more detail, I think, on that, and,
Yeah.
and
The overhang is.
and I agree with you, we've talked about it a lot, I see where you're coming from on that.
Yeah, I think it needs some dressing up and signage. And that really becomes, which Sandy just said, really becomes the first entrance the public can get into from the lower parking lot as they walk
Yeah,
up.
so it's, the key is that when you drive by it, you know that if you end up parking down there, that's where you wanna walk back to.
Yes.
Because the two backside entrances would be key only, like you would not be able to come in and out of those unless you were a guest of the hotel.
Oh, so once you're a guest, you have access to the back.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you'd have to keep.
Oh, okay,
So
okay.
once you understand this layout, cause like
Yeah.
you're saying, it will be confusing, there's no way, but once you know what you're doing, when you park back there, you come right in the back, and then you're right in the lobby, you're on the back side of the lobby. And the elevator's right there, so
Yes.
you can just enter there and go straight up.
Yep,
to your
okay, all right. It's just that, you know, where do I unload, where do I check in, where do I park?
Yeah,
So I'm just gonna go quickly, one, letter C, this back here, off the service entrance, this whole area right here, seems like a bottleneck. Seems
is
like,
a
like Waste Management is here, Renzi Foods is backed up delivering, there's a car coming in, there's a car coming out, and that might be twice a year, I don't know, but it just seems like I'm not, if you have a dumpster screen, I don't drive a waste management truck, but
It's inaccessible.
you can't get to it.
Yeah.
You can't, they can't get to
If there's a car parked there.
dump it.
In any one of those three spots, you can't get at the
so they
dumpster.
do have side dumpers,
Oh,
For the large ones?
yeah.
okay. Well, that was, you know, something to think about.
And one of the reasons that we're trying to, you're right, it's a bottleneck in there, right? You got the telephone pole.
We all recognize that.
That's right.
I'm
there.
sure I'm not inventing the wheel, I'm sure you guys have talked about it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
it's
one of the items we talked initially about, we just haven't got to that level of engagement on the electrical side is that there's a telephone pole with overhead wires, you know, right along that.
Yeah, so I had that to what you just said.
Right? And so we're actually, this plan respects that pole, saying if it had to stay, it's actually, we can do it, and we aren't, raising the grade to a point where we can drive under a telephone line, you know, or a power line, but it is a real thing. So here, we're trying to get close proximity, right, cause you know, any successful, you know, operations of a hotel,
So is there,
you can't put your dumpster way down there and have your people doing that. And so that kind of portion of that, and that being on the lower plateau, kind of allows us to kind of sink that, so to speak, in here and do a nice fence system to it, so we kind of take that visual kind of out of play a little bit, give them access. Here, this is made 16 feet wide for one way. Yeah, you got me even thinking, you know, as we're constantly evolving and working this project. If you're 16 feet here and somebody's walking and they're walking up here, you know, a simple painted line at 4 feet to separate the 12 feet of the drive lane versus the 4 feet of the sidewalk is actually, you know, to pick that up from you, so you try for that. But that's another example of how you can organize that space, you know, in there. We also have, so the electric, once that's figured out, we figure out exactly can that pole come down? Does that pole need to stay? Could it be replaced with a ground mount transformer? You know, the transformer that's on the pole, does that have to stay? It does feed, one of the neighboring, houses, we believe.
Yeah, and the
So-
dumpster also, you know, we originally had it set here, because this is the best place for the trash management guy. To me, it's the worst place to put it because I can see it from Main
Right.
Street. This is actually the point on the site that is furthest away from all of the residences. and it's the most shielded in terms of our ability to protect noise, because those things are really loud. Up here, you're up high on the plateau, when you bang that thing down. Down in here, we've got this site fence going, we can really clamp this up, so it's not. The guy who would be most unhappy is the guy who has to empty the trash, but the neighbors will be happier. People coming in out of the restaurant will be happier, the guests and the thing will be happier, and I think we can work with the waste management.
And lastly,
people to figure it out.
operationally, deliveries and trash, fortunately, a lot of these Adirondack hotels, it's very, very difficult to deliver. And so there's a lot of schedules where you say, okay, if you're gonna bring in your food delivery, I need it before 7:30 a.m. And you have to work with your vendors to get that done operationally. So it's not perfect, obviously, but we recognize that that's a busy, messy corner, and we're gonna have to manage it. But I always use the I always use the example of Mirror Lake Inn. Where does they do the trash? How do they get deliveries? Where do they do trash? The maintenance guys go around with the pickup trucks and they pick up the trash from all the different buildings in the Mirror Lake Inn, and they go to the dump. And that's their big trash. I'm not saying we do that here, but there's ways to.
I think we have to remember this is a boutique hotel. It's not a 300 room Hampton so there's only so many people pulling in, checking in.
Oh, I get that,
And
yeah,
there's-
absolutely.
Yeah.
But it still
So it's a balance.
could be an issue.
They're
All those
Yeah.
questions that he's
Yeah.
raising are really valid, and they're the same
Yeah.
questions we're wrestling with, and, given a couple more 1,000 square feet on the site, we probably have some better solutions, but.
So Jan, you got something you wanna?
I do, the sign that says Crossroads Hotel, the one that's resting on the roof of the
Yeah,
first
yeah.
level, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Boy.
I
mean, why don't I live here, 'cause right-
the second story
What is
porch.
it
Yeah.
made of? What's the material?
Yeah, right now it's more of an idea.
It is.
So we would be back in front of you with, a little
With
sign
more
package,
details.
so here's my idea.
Okay.
The idea is that this would be, these would be sort of freestanding, probably metal letters,
Mhm.
not backlit. I think that would be a bit tacky, but there'd be some sort of screening behind it so that there would be some contrast, because we kind of like the darker color of the lettering. And that screening might be like a metal or something like that, but it would be made to sort of like disappear in the visual field. And then what we're showing here are just really simple sort of down lights that pick up the design of this.
Right.
We're really sensitive that all the lighting on the front side of the building doesn't have to copy this, but it shouldn't also be a drastic change. There's no flashy anything in here. When at nighttime, I want this building to just be subtly lit, and these gables to just sort of wash, and then the porch just to light up. That's where the livelihood would be. And then back here at the monumental sign, that we actually are proposing to use sort of a cutout relief in a metal, and really use Adirondack natural stones and some rustic feels, and do some subtle LED lighting along that would, so that you don't really see the light fixture coming up out of the ground and shining on it, but it's just real subtle wash. This would be something along that line, but I think these are mostly going to be metal, painted in warm colors. This bronze color is a color we're picking up on, and then just sort of wash with light feel more subtly, but no backlighting and neon and those types of things.
And
I didn't think we did.
Yeah.
Well, in the back of Andy, on what he's saying, how early this is we, to be transparent, we haven't even finalized name yet with the branding companies.
Yeah.
So this is very early ideas on signage concepts. So we will be back with a full signage concept, but it's very early. We wanted to get in with height and parking and seeker and stormwater and make sure we're going in the right direction, and then start adding the detail to the building.
Okay, this is also quite early, but you'll come back to us with the landscaping, that's a little bit more detailed as well.
Of course, yeah.
Okay. Just to get it out there.
Scott, anything else to?
So tonight here, to me, this kind of feels a little more preliminary in some aspects. There's still some things you guys are grappling to get under control. But tonight here, what you're looking for is just to make sure I'm clear, is a consolidation of the 6 parcels and the parking variance.
No, really, to get beat up with questions.
So it just sounds like there's quite a bit of things that you guys are still, whether you.
We are. It really depends. We do this a lot, so in various communities, and every community is different, right? I've gotten full final approval with a lot less detail than we have already here in other towns. I'm not saying that's what we're asking for you, but I'm just saying that's how much it could vary. What doesn't vary though is the requirement under the Seeger law for the environmental review that the board has to undertake. So what we submitted was, Jacob submitted some applications, along with the project documents, right, for the board's review. That's to get the feedback from the board kind of early stage. We did not submit a seeker document, that is the State Environmental Quality Review Act, so we haven't filed that document. I would recommend that we would do a full environmental assessment form for a project of this magnitude, whether it's an unlisted action or a type 1, either would suffice. That really is the trigger to start your process. There are interested and involved agencies in the project, you know, between the DOT, the APA, and other local and state or county level people. So that's the process to get started. That's what we would do next. Because right now, the board, we'd love to say, hey, vote now, but it's actually illegal. So you're not gonna vote now, you know, so, but under the environmental review, that trigger for that, we would like to get that started. This is the meeting to kind of get in, don't show you a napkin sketch, show you something real, for the project, and then come in at for the next meeting with the seeker documents having been submitted for your review, with the applications.
APA application. So our action items, it's a great question, after we leave this meeting, our action items are get seeker going, finalize, get stormwater going, get application in with the APA, start contacting DOT, DEC, all the bad 3-letter words, right? So we gotta get in contact with all with that crew, and really get to work on the specifics of what we need to do legally to,
But I think the one thing we are asking for though is, you know, is the parking and the height like a non-starter? You know, because we don't want to have.
that's the main purpose of this meeting. If
Obviously, the height
The
is,
height of the building.
Yeah,
isn't an issue, it's not, I don't think it's an issue at all here.
I know, but
The
they're.
parking is gonna need some discussion.
It's not 40 feet off Park Street, is it? But they measure from the lowest.
So from here, I'll just,
So,
actually, this is,
existing or proposed?
yeah, this is important, and I didn't address this, but I want everybody to understand this. So the there are two heights to consider. The front elevation off of Park Street to the very tip of this parapet, because there's actually a little flat roof up there, is 43 feet 11 inches versus the 35 that's in the roof. The backside, when we get into this lower level entrance, we're actually 53 feet 11 inches, but you know, it's for a very small part of the building, and it's kind of way off the street, so. But those are the two numbers that would be evaluated at the APA level.
So when I met with the APA too, I asked them, would you actually go down to the lower parking lot and utilize that as a measurement? And they said, no, there's a certain level of common sense off the building to make sure that it's not 75 feet down to Park Street or something. You know, so I wanted to make sure we weren't in that situation, and they said that we should be fine on that side.
So after the material for seeker is submitted to the board, the only thing we would really be asking at that meeting would be circulation of the intent for the board to act as the lead agency, right? That
So I
takes
think-
30 days.
I think what we-
minimum. So this is an iterative process. We're coming back, you know, for
Oh,
sure.
right. And I think we'd like to, bring in an outside consultant. We'd like you, on our behalf, to hire Kurt Gagne to review these things. So we'd like you to enter into agreement with the town of Tupper Lake to do that.
And Kurt's the engineer or land use attorney?
He's an attorney.
Kurt, yeah.
I got that. Paul gave that to me.
Okay.
And I-
Okay.
yeah.
If we could just jump to the page of the Google where the, building is cited on the street.
How did we do these meetings before Google Earth?
So my question
You had
is,
to walk there.
if you go back to that map, where is the turn in? Are we in that double turn lane area?
So go,
Turning in.
actually zoom in a little bit towards that truck.
Do we,
Curb cut's
do we
there
need
already,
DOT involvement with the access to the hotel entrance?
Yeah,
Are we using the curb cut they put in?
we're using one of them, there's a couple for,
Yeah.
You want the street view or?
yeah, that'll work.
That looks great.
That's fine.
That's pre-construction though, that's pre-DOT.
Yeah, oh yeah, so that's not gonna work. Oh, you're gonna need those street views right there.
I would say, I think.
So right where that red shirt is?
Yeah, so there's two curb cuts. There's one here. Yep. That one we would take out. So there's an existing curb cut in this parcel, because they're different parcels now, so the DOT came and they say, oh, there's a parcel, I gotta give them access right. So this one would come out, this one would stay, this would be narrower than this currently is now. So let's say we would roughly hold this point and go 16 feet, across here for the drive in, so we're kind of back in here. That's why I was mentioning to Andy when I first saw this, when I pulled it up earlier when I got here, I said, that sign proximity wise is almost at the door.
So we're in
That sign,
we're in
that
the turn
sign,
lane.
that sign's like
State highway.
right
Right
here.
there.
Yeah, so we're outside of the turn lane by being here, the white line, we're just a hair, inside of that turn lane. But the other one is right in the turn lane.
So we need DOT.
So DOT
input, I would
needs to
think.
put it in. But we feel like we're actually making that's one of the key reasons we thought one way in. Because the two-way with the being in the turn lane and the amount of traffic you can get at that corner, we're like, that's gonna be a fight that it's a battle and I don't think we need to wage it. We can make this be successful without
Yeah,
fighting
and
that
I think we
battle.
actually looked at, flip-flopping the entrance and the parking so that we could get that further away, but then we're outside of the curb cut that exists and we're still actually somewhat in the turn lane.
Then you got
so it's
that
the same.
hydrant,
Yeah, we got hydrant there.
Well, what's nice is it exists though, right? That's
yeah.
impressive.
So that hydrant is right here, so that's kind of where our parking, where those cars are parked is kind of close to our parking that we would have there. And so we don't wanna get too far into that. So you can see these roadway signages that need to be baked into the plan still, right? And the consultation with DOT. So,
So there'll be consultation with DOT.
absolutely.
Will they
add
require-
something? When the road construction was underway, they took our property by eminent domain for 3 years. And we were in close contact with Tom Maroon during that whole process. And he knew all about the hotel project. The only concern he raised at the time was his concern about having everybody coming in and out, through one, but now we have these properties and he should be thrilled. That was the only.
Are you gonna need a traffic study like
DOT will require us to do traffic study, they will.
They will not?
They'll
Let me ask
require us
another-
to do a highway work permit, maybe, a non-utility work permit.
Let me ask another question about utilities. You must need something from the village of Tupper Lake that there's power there,
Yeah,
there's
I've got
water
time.
and sewer.
Yeah, I've gotta talk with Paul about that, and get that settled up.
I've hand sketched notes from the DOT
Well, that
job
was-
for the water tap that's supposedly
Yeah,
there.
that was another thing. While they were doing the road work, they did size the water and sewer and
Right.
all those lines to fit the hotel project, so we don't have to dig up the road again,
Oh.
hopefully for construction of the hotel.
Jim?
Number 17. So in the parking lot, then the pedestrians, the guests parking just off Lake Street on the lower parking lot would walk up the middle behind the row of cars, row of parking spaces, and could pick up the sidewalk near the service entrance, which they would be allowed to use also once they're a guest. Did I understand that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that would be signage. So they gotta come through that parking lot, they can pick up the sidewalk there, and then did that end up coming, well, no, it doesn't really, they could pick up the sidewalk there,
Yeah, they
but
would
had
just
to-
walk up the road edge here.
Up the road edge here, and that's the white, that's the old white.
That's why I mentioned that maybe
Okay.
if we could bisect the 16 feet to have a better, safer delineator. I mean, we all go to the grocery stores, right, in Hannaford or whatever, Tops or whatever store. They don't have sidewalks leading you right through everywhere, but it'd be nice, is the more you have, the nicer it is. And so by all means, this is a reasonable solution, but I do really think about it more and more. I keep harping on that delineator, knowing that the reality is people are gonna wanna walk up that. They're gonna need to walk up that.
Okay.
That we do that in a better manner.
All right. They
Jan?
probably just came back from a hike, so they can handle it.
Jan, do you have any other questions?
I think that we have touched on everything that I had notes on. Thank you.
Scott?
Can I bring up, one?
Just let me ask, what,
Yeah, go ahead. All right, yeah.
the photo you cited the building looking at it from, what, in front of the art center maybe? Is that the angle we're looking at?
Yeah.
I would love to see the building sited as a break over the hill coming down by Day Wholesale, looking at it. And the back of the building is totally visible coming up the boulevard.
Do you wanna see a rendering this direction?
I'd like to see running in that direction. I'd love to see one coming up the boulevard,
From
say.
Walgreens.
From Walgreens, yep.
On the Lake Street
Yeah.
end.
Cause what is it gonna look like sitting there as I go by the town hall, going by McDonald's? Are we looking, what are we looking at?
So-
Like Mount Washington up on the hill?
No.
Or,
So, as part of the APA process, when I met with them, I asked them, if you float balloons, it costs $15,000. And I asked if we'd have to go through all that expense, since it's similar to, and they mentioned no, but that we would have to pick out 6 spots and do the renderings that you're asking. So you helping through Paul or giving us feedback on the 6 spots that you would like to see, please do. It just helps us communicate with the APA that the board would like to see these angles, because we're going to be going through that process.
Yeah, the interesting part would, we'll in the renderings, we'll use vegetation, right? That's the reality. But we'll try to be cognizant of reality day 1 versus reality day, year
it'd be
30.
great if you did a.
Cause I can show you big mature trees and
Do a
it's gonna
nighttime
do
one
it
with the lights on in the roads
like
too, that'd be great.
blocks everything,
Sure.
The lower parking lot trees eventually would do what those trees there in that picture are doing, which is essentially blocking during the summer. But that's not,
Well, not when you're coming around the corner by Walgreens, you're looking right at it.
further.
Yeah.
Which brings me to my next question. The back of the building is very institutional. What can you do to break up, cause everyone coming up the boulevard from Watertown is looking at the back of that building sitting there. So what's, the back of your building? Not
Yeah,
that building.
the detailing that we have on the front of the building is gonna continue around the back, because we don't have porches and balconies off the back. Every building has that, but that would have to be detailed out, that lower level on the right, that's where your back of house and kitchen functions are. So you wouldn't want windows.
This is
And I would argue the back of the building is as visible or more visible than the front of the
Be
building.
the back right, I would think.
Right, exactly.
That's the other building that's here now.
Right,
So
the one where the lobby and.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, that's different.
So we can address that.
Yeah, we can look at that.
So I'm really happy, and I hope you end up with LEED certification on the hotel. That's great. But also, I think when we were on the grading sheet, you got the 2 residences, one on each side. Other than a large deciduous tree, have you thought about, and there's nothing's dropped down up here, you got a short wall, is there anything that you're considering for screening between your parking lot and those 2 homes?
Yeah, we have to study that in more detail, is the honest answer. Right now, there is a necessity and desire to do it. The larger trees that you see there, they would create open gaps until they're mature, right? And then they're limbed up. So that's one of the things that we're going to the next steps.
I knew that was on your radar.
Yeah, it's a
They have a
visual
lot better
thing,
view than they have now.
it's a visual thing and it's a utilitarian thing too, you know, it's the views in and the views out, you know, whose view perspective are you taking, you know?
Is that tree on your property or not?
What's that?
Yes, those trees,
Are those
that
on
tree.
your property
That's
line?
right on the border.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you don't know whether you're staying or not?
So we, yeah.
Is that-
Well,
That's the lower part.
I guess,
Oh,
I
yeah,
don't
that's
know
the
right
upper
now,
part.
but no, I guess not.
Those two ones are coming down, right?
No, not the one on the
Not
right.
that
Oh, no,
one,
not,
those
oh,
two.
Ergo, yeah, that's fair.
Somebody asked me about those,
Yeah, the
that
tree.
maple tree.
Nice looking
I think
tree.
there's another one
Is that
behind it.
yours?
It's nice, that's,
Better tap it.
it's nice.
Just as a side, that's, you know.
Yep, they're right on
Here's your
the
other
Paul, do you have
neighbor.
any questions you want to keep going? Or comments?
Our plan doesn't require it to come down, you know, it's right on the edge, you know.
I think, nothing that I can't share with everybody via email, with their project team. Tom Maroon had stopped in my office and he wanted me to point a couple things out. You ready for that?
Absolutely.
And if that's all right that I share via email with you guys in the team, the questions that I have?
Yes, that's right, yeah, that's wonderful.
It's more of the engineering part of it. Tom Maroon's the
Let's
DOT guy that rebuilt Park Street.
Let's give Paul
I read
4
the
minutes.
list, I read the list.
4 minutes, Paul.
Alright, I got it. So, he was kind of perplexed. He was kind of perplexed about the whole layout because you have sewer going to come across the highway. That's not happening. You have water coming across the highway, and that's not happening. Right? He's perplexed about this stormwater, why he needs so much here, and how much water is there really gonna be in this green space?
And this is a record water, so this is,
There already are laterals in there.
right, that's what we're connecting here.
Alright, he was under the impression that he decided.
Right now, we couldn't find anything, we had DOT, we asked them for all their documents and they gave us, nothing yet.
Okay.
So we're trying to find like the as-bills from, all I have is record design drawings. I know that structure's there, I'm not sure where the next one is, they're supposed to have left the lateral, but they have no actual as-built documentation that can do this. So if they have something.
I think Tom probably has.
I'd love to.
So that's what he thought about, the bus making this turn here. If we bring the bus in, how's the bus gonna make this turn through there?
Tour bus?
Yes. Right? And I don't know, about fire apparatus.
Yeah, we looked at that, we've gotta get to,
He wants to see numbers on this catch basin and the volume it can handle. Okay?
yeah, that's,
And then he says this storm drain is not here. This storm infrastructure on Main Street is not here. He said it's down here, where it starts and goes towards.
yeah, there's more catch basins here.
They're there, and the other catch basin is over here. So you have it connected here, there's nothing here.
They did not interconnect this one, this one?
No.
Okay, so that's different than the original design drawings, they must be changed.
Are you surprised?
Either way, we're gonna go secure that, put in a line and we have, and the next one.
They're digging up the sidewalk and the highway.
The edge of the highway, yeah, cause the catch basin's right inside, so we have to dig up the inside of the highway.
Okay.
And
We
curve
just-
line.
We're doing that Sarah right now.
Yep, thank you. So he just wants, he's an engineer,
Oh,
but
yeah,
I
no,
know he wants to
it's-
see numbers, he wants to see those reports, Once, so other than that, that's what Tom wanted me to bring up.
Okay, great.
Is that 4 minutes?
That was like 2.5.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive.
You can reserve your time.
I see my time here.
Anything else from anyone?
Not at the moment, not until I get home probably.
You guys have anything for us?
So I guess to summarize the question about the purpose of this meeting is deal breakers. Every month we get into this, there's more money and more time and more agencies, right? So if we're sitting here today and the parking's not gonna work, sooner it's better to know that on anything of that nature.
So, it really isn't gonna be this board that could be a deal breaker, it would be the ZBA.
Okay.
Alright, because they're the ones who are gonna authorize, approve variance or not,
Okay.
right? So, yeah.
This planning board gives it, to be, help us understand. Your planning board, this board is gonna give a recommendation to the zoning board. Then they're gonna take it or not.
Not by code, they don't have to give a recommendation to the planning board. They can if they want to, right? It's not required for the ZBA. This isn't a use variance, these are area variances.
Right.
The height, the setbacks, the parking, those are all variances.
Yep.
That have to get approved by the ZBA.
Right.
You have to submit an
But this
application.
planning board will at least give their thoughts to the zoning board. And then the zoning board.
It'd be great if
And
you gave us
request
some,
them to do
it'd be
that,
great
or
if you
they
gave
can-
us some alternatives. You haven't given one except for Valet, but where are you gonna take the car, Saranac Lake? Or the bus up to the high school, or, so give us some
I mean,
what are your options? Tell us how you're gonna fix it.
in the event
Right.
that, say the ZBA doesn't approve the variance for parking, then do you have some sort of a backup plan there? Or?
Well, even with the ZBA's approval, what do you do with the other 30 cars on a busy day?
Right, that's what I mean, is there a backup plan?
Work a deal,
Yeah.
bigger day. Yeah, right.
You good? Well, thank you for coming, it's
Yeah.
interesting and exciting, it's a great,
Yeah,
great project.
Exciting
Thank you,
project.
everyone. Appreciate your time.
Yeah,
Great.
thank you.
It's been very constructive, thank you.
Yeah.
Our next item is approved minutes, January 22,
Is it rude to
2020.
leave?
You can if you want, or you're welcome to stay.
Yes, that's yours.
Yeah. Second.
All in favor?
Take it. Take that. I'll put it on. Where's my farmers?
You guys out the door?
Did they adjourn? I don't think so. Huh? Maybe. I'm just not sure.
Andy?
We only had to close the meeting, that was it.
Yep.
AJ.
Very exciting.